Cocha region. We know that the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape have been severely affected by wildfires, but we're asking a much broader question, and we thank you for joining us. The question is, how prepared is South Africa for disasters? And what does readiness actually look like at a community and at a municipal scale? So joining us is Councillor Danny Benson. He's the head of the safety and security at the Cocha municipality, and he's been on the ground throughout this fire crisis, and he will speak to the local response. And we're also joined by Taryn Cooks from AfriForum Disaster Management. She's a disaster management specialist, and she has decades worth of experience in disaster management and training. And they focus on community preparedness, disaster training, and readiness support, rather than running municipal disaster services. So we are going to be looking at how those two correlate and link. Just to note, this is a public forum. I will be monitoring the questions, but please do be patient if we're unable to get to all of them. And there is also a slight broadcast delay. Councillor Daniel Benson, I'd like to start with you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time. We know that we were meant to be joined by Executive Mayor Hatton Bodman, but he was called to an emergency meeting where you managed to step in and speak to the safety and security and the broader issues of disaster management within South Africa and whether or not South Africa is ready, and particularly in your case, what's been happening in Cocha. So maybe we can jump into that. What do things look like this evening? What is the update just over a week that we've had these fires in the Cocha region?
Yeah, good evening to all. Had introduced me, I'm the MMC. It can stand for Mighty Men Conference, but it's actually meaning a member of the mayoral committee. My portfolio is safety and security, and I'm telling you, it looks much better after 7 days, 6 nights, 7 days, that our firefighters and our pilots in the air and everybody fighting this fire. Now it's just a little bit of smoke coming up here and there, but thank God, and I mean really thank God, that we winning the situation, and you just see some fires, not fires, some smoke, where it's still locks and things like that is still burning or something like that. So really, after 7 days, it started actually at the 6-7 days ago, and really our firefighters is tired. Some guy even collapsed in the field. One fighter have collapsed because of the work they put in. But I believe we're winning, and it's much better, much better.
And we've seen a lot of farmers, community members stepping in, helping with these fires. That's something I'd love for us to get into, because Taryn, you and I have had a conversation prior to this where you've mentioned that there should be some kind of readiness, some kind of training, some kind of preparation. Maybe can you touch on that a little bit? People who have all good intentions to go and assist with fires and emergency situations, what are the processes and what is that supposed to look like?
Is that a question for me?
I think I'm happy for you to answer that, Councillor, but I think if we can ask Taryn Cooks.
Yes.
If you can just unmute Taryn, and then we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Kat. Good evening, everybody. Yes, help is also always necessary in an incident. And I know people do that out of the goodness of their hearts to go and assist in, let's take the Cocha fires for instance, because it looks very, very big. It's scary sometimes. The flames are very long. The wind is blowing and people want to assist. Normally with any type of disaster, people like to assist. If we think about the tsunami that was in 2006, people that was on vacation assist each other to get away from that tsunami. But with that, and I think Councilman Benson will definitely agree to that and say with that, sometimes those people that have good intentions to assist can be in the way. Meaning that they want to come and extinguish a fire and they may be on the wrong side of the fire and they are in danger. So the firefighters then have to look at those people that are putting themselves in danger and also for themselves. So to assist when there's a big fire, there's always something to do, either to bring drinking water for the guys that's working, food to eat, your glucose type of cold drinks that you can bring to the fire for those people, that you can also do. If you're trained with wildfire training, you can assist them to extinguish the fire so it's been extinguished. With that, you get your response team that will go out and start extinguishing, and then you get what we call the people that are doing mop-up at the back when they start extinguishing. The mop-up people, or the people that's doing mop-up, is actually the important people that is on a fire. Because they looking after that the fire doesn't start again, doesn't flame up again, they ensure that the fire line is totally extinguished. If there's any cow dung or sheep dung, they just will kick it back into the black area. So to ensure that the fire doesn't start again. I think there was some flare-ups, I'm not sure in Kouga, but I know in Mossel Bay area. And then when the wind takes the fire again, and then it's a big fire again. So most of the time, if you have like a knapsack that you can use that for mop-up purposes, meaning you look at the fire line, you kick up, open all the grass poles that is there, so you can kick them open, ensure that there's nothing smoldering anymore, and ensure that the fire line is totally extinguished and that's no flare-ups anymore. Just a side note is that, and you can speak to any firefighter and he will tell you that wildfires is the most dangerous fire that is. Not a building fire, not a house fire, but wildfires. And because the wildfire is unpredictable, the wind can change anytime and you can get in a very dangerous situation in seconds.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for that, Tarine. I would like to quickly go back to Councillor Benson, if I may. Councillor, just speaking again on the scale and the magnitude of these fires, what kind of concrete numbers does Kouga have at the moment in terms of size? I want to also put it to you that when I spoke with people who have been on the ground, who've been working in fire for a very long time and had some discussions with them, I was told that they had never seen a fire like this in Kouga. So in terms of scale, in terms of magnitude, what kind of damage have we seen here?
Yes, again, in my lifetime of staying here in Kouga, and it's a long time. I mean, I moved here 20 years ago, and I saw some fires, but you will be surprised how it's from St. Francis, it's from this side of town, and then suddenly you hear somewhere else. Now the thing is, it's because the wind plays such a big role in how the fire just erupt or just start again. Tarine talk about mop-ups and so on, but you see, we have so little firefighters that they have to rush to somewhere else to go, and because the fire jumped over even the rivers, because of the wind changed so much. Now it changed like it's north and then it's south, and then And like she said, it's very dangerous. So we have a few firefighters, and therefore our call out was to the municipalities in the Eastern Cape, and again we got so much support. Uh, Firefighters coming from other municipalities like Platland, not Beiersnodder, Transnet, Giver of the Givers. Your SPCA was here, Sunday River, Amatoli district. So when we call out to them, the MM of the Sarah Baartman district, Miss what's her name, Daniel was just organizing everything. She and our acting just talk and ask for help, and that help was big. So I mean, you look from the west, even where our border is on the west, the fire was even coming from from the metro side and coming from Kokama side, so from both sides. But inside, we have a vast area. You can't believe it. It's big, but most of it was the bushes that catch fire. But manpower wise, we was never, and even now we are never enough men to curb the fires. But I'm telling you, they working day and night, and it, like I said, it's a vast area. But what actually helped us a lot was the air support. You know, we got 3 helicopters, bombers, and things like that. They just pick up water, and I mean, I can tell you that we have around 1.2 million liters of water that the choppers just dumped, because it was such a big area to cover. So yes, the damage, it's big. Most of it, like I said, is bush, but it's sometimes just threat to buildings and houses and informal settlements, and then we have to leave this and run to another space, and that's where the flare-ups come again, because we don't mop properly, and therefore we have to go back then again, because a fire start again at the other side. So yeah, it was difficult. Manpower will never be enough, but what I learned in this period is that we can count on each other. Municipalities in the Eastern Cape, some even in the Western Cape, close to us, Nice and George, just send whoever and whatever they can to come and assist. And then for sure, AfriForum was there also, Giver of the Givers. So all of that people, NGOs, but important what Tareen say is that it's dangerous, that there's people who want to come and try and kill the fires. We say no, that is too much danger, because at one stage the chief was driving his buggy 15 kilometers per hour, and he can't have catch up with a fire. So that is how fast the fire spread through the wind. And if you are not a professional firefighter, you can be caught in that fire, and it can be more problems for us. So what we ask for the people, communities, is just give something, but we want you to stay away from coming to help with the fires. Yes,
Okay.
thanks.
Councillor, thank you very much for touching on that. And these are all the things that
You are
I'd
not
like
mute now. You are, sorry, yeah.
Can you hear me? Is that okay? Okay. Capacity wise, you've mentioned the scale of the fire. We know that about 6 structures have been damaged in the Coega region specifically. You mentioned, little capacity in terms of fighting these fires and community members jumping in, trying to assist. But possibly then, you're not necessarily wanting that as a municipality, but you are appreciative of the support in terms of bringing in essential aid, and you're appreciative of all the other support, like the air support that you mentioned, with little firefighters. But looking at the Sarah Baartman district, that Coega is not the only area that has been affected by these fires. There are neighboring municipalities who might not be as equipped as Coega in terms of firefighting response? And I say this and I ask you, Councillor, maybe for some clarity on this, because I'd like to know about the number of fire stations that are within the Coega region, in comparison to places like Karedo is for example, limited in capacity, that operates in the Kokama district. They seem to have less firefighting support. Can you tell us a little bit more about this capacity and what capacity you're operating at? Because from what I've seen, I just want to clarify whether, you mentioned limited capacity, and we have seen people step in to assist with that limited capacity, and we know it's complicated. What are your thoughts on all of that? Taryn, you are welcome to also jump in at any point.
Sorry, I can't hear anything. I'm not sure what's the problem now.
That's all right, Councillor. I think we'll just move on for the sake of time. Taryn, can you tell us a little bit more about, so AfriForum, as far as I understand, has this disaster management division, a fairly new division you've mentioned. Yes. You said that it's been around for 3 years, and you've done quite a bit of research before implementing to the 165 branches that AfriForum has across the country. What has that research shown you in disaster management readiness in South Africa?
Well, Kat, to be very honest, I don't think South Africa is ready for disasters. I don't think they know how to be ready. That's the one thing. And another thing is people don't usually look at warnings that the South African Weather Service will put out, and they will just think, oh yeah, it's just another warning. And then disaster happens, or there's a flood or a huge fire, and then they know that's why the Weather Services has put out a warning. So when there's a warning put out, the community must take note of this warning and must prepare themselves. If they know there is a flood there's going to be a lot of rain, they must go and prepare themselves, look at their houses, look if there's anything they can do, if there's a lot of water or the gutters clean, everything like that. Small things that they can do to make the disaster impact not so big. And part of that is education and training. And as I say, disaster management changed in 2000, internationally changed in 2000, becoming more proactive than reactive, meaning they have to be more disaster risk management regarding the reaction to a disaster. So if you're prepared for the disaster, and you are prepared for the disaster, for instance, in a town, that my Engels my verlaat, die stormwaterpype, the storm drainage in the roads, if that's not cleaned, then there are going to be a flood in that road. So just a easy thing like that to do in a town, for example, then you are ready. If you are ready for the disaster, you limit the risk of people dying, you limit the risk of economical impact, and also you limit the risk of all this funds that need to go into that disaster to rectify or to build new infrastructure. If we look at the KZN floods about 3 years back, some of that infrastructure is not yet being built after that big floods, and those people were on their back foot when the flood struck them. And the thing is, they've known beforehand about the flood that was coming. So I would say, for instance, like for wildfires and in the Western Cape, Eastern Cape at this stage, it's very dry there. The weather, it's dry, the wind are very strong. The feel, as if you talk about the feel, that is meaning the plant material, the bushes and the grass and everything that can burn is very dense at this stage. So even if there's a small spark, doesn't matter what causes the fire, then a big fire will start, and it will definitely, if the wind takes the fire, it will definitely become a very, very large fire. So for communities, when they see a fire, it is so important to immediately report that fire. But there's always a but. But the thing is, it's easy to pick up the phone the fire brigade and tell them, listen, I see smoke in the eastern direction. Okay, where do you send in the fire brigade? So the best way is, if you see smoke, go and look what the problem is, report it to the fire brigade, give the street address, the crossing street, what type of fire you see. Is it a vehicle fire? Is it a grass fire? Is it a building fire? So they know in the control room what resources they need to send to this incident. And if they need more resources to get. If it's a rare day, and we spoke yesterday quickly about the rare day. So the South African Weather Services will issue warnings and will say the fire danger index, or the FDI, will be red, 75 and more. And then they have a few precautions that you have to take, get your fire equipment ready and stuff like that. And then I think the community must take notice of that. They must be switched on to that. So if they see a fire, to report it as soon as possible. And also to take care not to make fires in an unsafe place, or smoke and throw the cigarette butt out of the window, or go and do welding in the veld, something like that. So that helps also to prevent these type of big fires.
I think I'm wondering how realistic that is in terms of education and training. Tarrine, what do you think? In terms of informing communities about fire safety, we know that you do fire safety training across the country. Like we said, you've got decades of experience, but in terms of realistic on the grounds approach in keeping South Africa as a whole ready for disasters, perhaps also what kind of disasters, or what kind of what can we anticipate? What are the major disasters affecting South Africa at the moment?
At this stage, the major disasters is wildfires. During the summer, it's in the Western and the Eastern Cape, and during the winter, it's the northern part of the country. And then floods that we will get due to a lot of rain. We had a lot of rain the past 2 years now. And as we know, there is already flooding in Limpopo, Phalaborwa area, the Kruger Game Wildtuin, at the Kruger Wildtuin. There's also big flooding. Mozambique, there's big flooding. So fires and flooding is the biggest disasters at this stage in South Africa. So yeah, what training, to get back to the training or education, in the rural areas, there is a fire protection association, and the fire protection associations are established according to Act 101 of 1998 on veld and forest fires. So, but that is only for the rural communities, for your farmers and everybody that have farm in the rural community. So the FPAs are doing the utmost best to inform the community about the red day or the fire danger index and what to do according to that. And also they do training, they work in conjunction with the municipality, they work in conjunction with the fire department as well. But the main thing is in town, your cities or your towns that need more education. For instance, if we look at Mossel Bay, most of the fires that was there were near the towns, near houses. And people didn't know what to do, where they need to evacuate, that they try with a hose pipe to extinguish a flame that is more than 20 meters, and with a heat the radiant heat that is very, very high. You can't do that. you can try to use the hose pipe, but the heat is so intense, the water evaporates before it gets to the flame. So we try with AfriForum to do all this type of training with wildfires or veldfires. We try to do that and to educate communities what to do, what they can do in a situation if there's a wildfire.
Councillor, maybe I can put it back to you. In terms of being portfolio head of the safety and security part of the municipality, what kind of plans are in place? What kind of systems and preparations are in place in terms of preparing for and anticipating for disasters such as fires like these?
Yes, you have to have a disaster management plan that you bring to council, and it's properly worked through, and then council adopt that kind of plan that you have, a management plan. But you must go beyond that. I normally talk about the 5 Ps: proper planning, prevent poor performance. You have to have, and you must be prepared for any situation, and therefore you can put up plans, put it in a file, but and you can take it out the day that it happened. So I think anything can happen, and therefore you must be prepared for anything that to happen. But you have to do scenarios where you say, if there's a fire, what are we going to do? Where are we going to put the people? How are we going to do our logistic? What structure must we follow? All that things, you can work it when it's still calm. So because when things hit the fan, there's normally panic, and then you don't think straight. But when it's calm, you can think about the situations, and then work according a plan how you're gonna deal with it. And then even you have to do dry runs. You have to go to communities and just check if the alarm goes off what are their reaction, and then you can do something, put something together to tell people, if you hear this sound or then you have to do the following things. And I believe in structure in the communities.
Yeah.
There must be someone that take charge of the few streets, and also the farmer must know exactly what he must do. So yes, it's about education, but like Tereen said, it's sometimes you do it and people, you have to do it regularly. You have to practice. You have to talk to the people. You have to communicate about if there's a flood.
To respectfully interject with you, Councillor, are these the preparations that COGA has undertaken? Has COGA sort of followed these procedures, done these kinds of drills in the past, or is this something that COGA is learning from this particular fire?
No, we did it. There was fires before in St. Francis Bay, and we what we normally do is we do debriefing. That is so important. That's closer look, the debriefing. What have you done bad, and what can you do better, and how can you just perform better in the future? So you took out that. So we have fires in the past, and we have learned from that. But you are never too old to learn. So this one was bigger than any other one, and it's about coordinating all the stuff and all that. So we will have a debriefing. We will look at where we fall short and maybe come up with better plans next time. But yes, most of the time we was in a way always 99% ready, but that 1% that's a problem. So we want to be 100%. So now we follow certain processes and things like that, just to get help, who we can phone and all that. But I'm telling you, I think South Africa, we experience it's a problem of lack of equipment and things like that. We were struggling for helicopters, and that is a big thing. You can't fight a fire without air support, and we have to phone all over the country to just find someone,
Mm.
organization, SAPS, or the.
In your opinion, who is based on your research, you've done a lot of research, that you are an expert in safety, disaster management rather. What municipalities across the country do you believe are doing it right at this stage that can be given as clear of what needs to happen? For example, resources, who are allocating the adequate resources to.
Yeah, that's difficult. I don't want to put my head now on my neck on a block here and say there's one. But I believe that I believe that there's no actually really a municipality that can stand on its own, because you are too small to fight big fires like this. When there's a disaster, you need other municipalities to assist. You need the district to help. You need the province to assist. You need national government to assist you. And that's the problem. That is the problem. So if you have plans, everything, but you haven't got, I'm saying that we have to look at how district, province, and national can assist. And let's get the tools like helicopters. Let's get the helicopters. I think there's 60 helicopters in the country, but one, it's a big problem to get one. So you can try to nip the fire in, but if you haven't got the air support and the communications and your structure, people who support you with food and water, if you haven't got that, so it's important to now know what you got in hand and where you're going to get help when you need it.
I think that as you mentioned, that air support seems quite significant, and we look forward to the debrief and the outcomes of evaluation of these fires and these massive fires. And I'll come back to you, Councillor, because I do have a burning question for you, but I would like to come back to Taryn and get her opinion on what municipalities are doing right before we go into what's not working.
Kat, I think the one thing that if a municipality have a plan is a basis for change. So if you don't have a plan, you're planning to fail. That is it all in the shorts. Touga had a plan, but as the councillor said, I didn't expect the intensive fire that it was, but they had a plan, and according to your plan, you have certain steps that you need to follow. And you have your contact details is there, and the plan is updated every year, for instance. But what I experienced, I'm working nationally, so what I experienced, there are some municipalities that doesn't have even a disaster management plan. They don't know what to do if a disaster struck. They don't have enough resource to assist. So then the community will come to the front and they will assist with whatever that is needed in that area. We had a flood in Thabazimbi last year, just outside of Thabazimbi, and there was a family, a father, mother, and a child that was clinging onto a tree due to the Crocodile River that was coming down. And we couldn't get the people in time on scene. The government, the municipality was just nowhere. And people there was some of the game farmers that have helicopters, and they have managed to assist and get the people out. Like Leopold as well, the holiday pensioners retirement village in just before Thabazimbi as well. They were totally cut off of the world. And a private institution like SARSA, that is a search and rescue institution, NPO people also work, have normal jobs. They do search and rescue for basically for a hobby. They went in and they assist the people there. So I think there's a huge gap between government and role players, and I think we can definitely take hands each other and assist each other in difficult times. Sometimes you want to do a lot of things to assist, but you can't do that. But every NGO and every role player have his niche, if I can say it like that, to assist. For instance, with the debriefing, and I'm very glad the councillor talked about the debriefing, because it's so important to do that. It's lessons learned that in the debriefing that you do. And I've mentioned to you yesterday about Phalaborwa, that 13 houses burned down due to a wildfire that was out of, I think it was 10 kilometers away from town, and it started at the wastewater treatment works, and it jumped over the road and it burned down 13 houses in town. I was there last year, November. I was again in Phalaborwa, and nothing's changed. The vegetation is still dense. There is really nothing changed. The hydrants is still dry. There's no hydrants, fire hydrants that you can get water from, and now that falls onto the community to do something about that. But I think we can definitely work together with the government and municipalities. For instance, if we had a trained team that can just do mop-up in Kouga municipality, the firefighters can do the firefighting, and the mop-up team will just come in. They will finishing up the mop-up, and that is how we can work together, because mop-up is not as dangerous as fighting fires. So you don't need those bunker gear that the fire guys that they use. That you don't need the balaclavas and so on. And as I said, the heat is not so intense. So we can what I would suggest is to look now at community members and ask people who wants to be part of the disaster management in Kouga, and start like, for instance, an easy thing like a mop-up team for when there's fires. Next year, if there's fire again, those people will just come to the incident, and we will start a mop-up.
Thank you. I think it's interesting to see how much of the community stepped in without being asked. I mean, we don't know what protocols. I mean, only now with my research and my learning about the protocols, actually on the melt at the fire station, putting your name down, this is how it works. So are the communities across South Africa informed about this? How can they stay informed? What kind of evacuation documents or preparations are available to the public, for example? How can the public access disaster management plans? Is that something that they should have access to? And how could they get that access?
Yes, for the municipalities, the public can get access to the disaster management plan, because it forms part of your integrated development plan of the municipality, the IDP. It's actually a great part of the IDP, the disaster management. And what they can do is they can work through that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of reading to do. So people don't want to read these days. Everything must be easy, but they can read through that, and then they can adapt that plan for, let's say, for their neighborhood. As Councillor Benson said, a few street captains, if we have a captain in a street, and they adapt the plan to that. The thing with a plan is you have to integrate it. You can't work in silos. You have to integrate your plans. So, and that is why it's very important to know how the fire department works and how the command and control work, and then you can just actually slide into that, and you're not a hinder, but you actually assist and support the fire department. You can put your own plan together for your house. That is an actually very good thing to do in any case. For instance, I normally use this example. Let's say there's a total cell phone network is down. All the networks is down. You have to get hold of your child at school. How are you going to do that? What emergency plan did you discuss with your child? Where are you going to meet your child, and are the child going to wait for you until you meet him there? During disasters, if there's really a very big disaster, first that goes is your electricity, then your communication goes. And that is important that your children know what to do in a case of emergency, that father can't get hold of the child or vice versa, what must be done to do that. So on AfriForum's webpage, we have, under community safety, we have a few hints and tips regarding different types of disasters for wildfires, floods, snow, heat wave type things like that. And people are really welcome to download that and go and read about that. It's very basic, but it gives you a good idea of what to do before disaster, during disaster, and after disaster, what to do with that. And then I would suggest we have to get a leader in the community, and that's where AfriForum's branches is also part of that. And we're busy developing disaster management plans in conjunction with the local municipality and also the province for our AfriForum branches. So it means that they know what to do, our members know what to do, and how they slot in with the government organizations as well to assist.
Councillor, is there any chance that you could please give Cat White Media access to that disaster management document so that we can disseminate it to the public as well, just on behalf of the community? And if we could possibly get that from you by sort of end of business, by the end of this week, or we can have a chat about that.
Yeah, no problem with that. If I get your details where I must send it, then I can do that. But it's also on our website.
Great.
All our plans and SOPs, and SOPs is not for soup, it's standard operation procedures. It's all in our on file in our website. But Tareen talk about, people don't like to read. Now we got this thing like videos and things, but you will find people TikTok and all that, but they don't read the stuff or look at the stuff that's so much important. And like I said, people are lazy to read and so on. But I believe that if the mountain don't come to Muhammad, then Muhammad must go to the mountain. So we will set up now new things like talking to youngsters, to schools and all that. We do that. We have programs that we reach out to people where we teach them about environment, we teach them about fires and disasters. But it's difficult, but I think we have to let the community also get committed to do their part. And that's very difficult. But I'm telling you that I also saying that in now when we was in this situation, you see all organizations, like I said, Give of the Givers, AfriForum, work on fire, all that have just come together. But what I like, what Tareen said, is that mop up teams. No, I was a commander long in the army, so for me now to ask the chief, have you got mop up teams? Which I think I will bring it in our debriefing. He will ask me, where do I get this knowledge of firefighting? But for me, it's logic, because you see, I told you right in the beginning, when we just kill the fire, and then because of our numbers, you have to rush to another place because there's a fire starting or whatever. Then you leave, but there was no proper mop up. Now, that was also thing that I think when I'm going to talk about in the debriefing is why is it that it flare up? And then they must educate me so that I can say that is a problem. Why AfriForum can train our people for mop-up teams, which is not so dangerous, like she said. So I'm going really. I learned something also, but also from Torino. But mop up is very important because you can't go back 10 kilometers back where a fire was just to go and kill it because there's no proper mop up. So I hope my chief fire chief is not listening or listening to get a tip from me and Tareen that we can have such things as a mop up team, which is not dangerous. We can train the community who want to help. They can do the mop up.
Tareen, in the event, for example, I know there are so many safety tips, and for the sake of time, it's difficult to get into all of them regarding disasters nationally, and that really is our focus. Is South Africa ready for disasters? So can we focus maybe on community level, what that looks like? In the event, for example, that I get a notice right now, I'm not trained in fire safety whatsoever. This is obviously taking into account that there are potentially programs underway that can do that. But in the event that someone is not trained in fire safety, what kind of tips can you give them? If they see smoke, if they hear of a fire, of course, I suppose the scenario depends on location and proximity.
Yes.
What tips do you have? What are you supposed to do immediately?
Well, the first thing is your safety first. As I said, wildfires is one of the dangerous fires that is international. You can ask any fireman. We had a German firefighter from Munich last year with us here in Pretoria that was assisting, and he also said the same thing to us. So internationally, wildfires is danger fires. So your safety must be first. When the authorities ask you to evacuate. I know people you have sentimental value in your property, in your home. I also have that, and if it's gone, it's gone. But the thing is, a house can be built, grass can grow again, but if you are maimed or you are dead, you can't do anything about that. So listen to the authorities. Other thing is, if you're not trained and you don't know what to do, please stay away from that fire. Because what people will do is they want to go and have a quick video, make a video and send it all over social media. But they are in the way of the emergency vehicles. Sometimes people just park their cars in the road and they get out of their cars and they walk away, lock the car and so on. And then at a stage, the wind turns and that fire comes to that car, or the emergency vehicles can't go through. It's just chaos. So actually stay away from that. Report to the fire. If you want to help, report to the fire station. Report to the JOC, your Joint Operational Center, and ask them, what can you assist with? And they will tell you, because they know what's happening on the ground. If you're trained in wildfire fighting and you have equipment like a bakkie or any other fire extinguishing equipment, what you can do is go to the JOC and tell them, listen, this is what I've got. How can I assist you? Where can I assist you? So that is really important to report to the JOC. And with that, I'm not sure if Koga had that, but put somebody there from the JOC side, from the municipality side, to deal with these people that come and say, listen, I can help with what? So those people have somebody to talk to and get back to them on what they need. And then the other thing is, if you need, well, there's food gonna meet. If you can make some sandwiches, do that and take it to the JOC, or arrange with people to take it where it's needed. Basically work through your JOC. And the last thing is your communication is so important. If you have radio communication, that will work excellent. If you don't, make sure that you have enough communication. And the other thing is, stay in the black. Don't go to the green side, the unburned area, because if the wind change and you in the unburned area, that fire can kill you. That is really what can happen when the wind changes, and that is suddenly. That is really, it will blow in a certain direction, and then just something, and it will turn and it can kill you. So that is a few hints and tips that we can give to people. We, as I said, we can, as councillors said, we can assist with training, just to educate people on what to do with wildfires, and to be rather an asset than a ball on the foot, you know. So yeah, so that is important.
What kind of major threats, and this is for you, Councillor Benson, what kind of major threats are there in terms of fire safety and security in Coega, and what kind of efforts in terms of your plan, your disaster management plan, knowing it's sort of fire season at the minute, what kind of efforts have been made to prevent the spreading of fires? For example, we're aware of drought-stricken areas. We're aware of the dry vegetation. Loads of people have reached out to Cat White Media regarding the wattle, an invasive plant species, and that seemingly contribute to that take up a lot of water and burn, attribute to the fire. So, and to the fast spreading of that fire, what kind of efforts, what have you identified, and what kind of efforts have been made up until this point in terms of mitigating those risks?
Yes.
It seems we've lost the councillor, Kat. I can just comment on the disaster plan. It is really nice to have it, but I know people struggle to interpret it, how the plans have to work. And that is also what AfriForum assists with, is to interpret that plan, and also to get the plan together for basically the community or structures, and make it as easy as possible. But before you can do a plan, you have to do a risk assessment. You have to know what the risk is, who's vulnerable. So there's quite a few things that you look at, and according to that, you put your disaster management plan together. So and then you have to practice it. That is, you have to practice to see where's the shortcomings, what work, what doesn't work, with that then. I can just, for interest's sake, I don't know if you, oh, there's the councillor back.
Great, Tarina, I'd love to hear what you have to say, but I think if Councillor is able to just answer the question in terms of risk assessment, what's been done, and in terms of mitigating those risks regarding things like the wattle and other invasive plant species that affect the water in the area, but also are seemingly fire risks as well.
Yeah, you see, in our disaster management plan, especially with fires, not with flood, but fires, we in our disaster management plan, we say that farmers must do fire belts, you know, to clear some. And then we also going around and look where's the bushes are. We do bush clearing. We sent out communication about don't open fires. We also even talk about when we visit communities, we look at the gas, how, if they use gas, if it's safe to use it. We also have stations where we put in the informal settlements. If there's a problem, we want to bring. You know, the big problem is in informal settlement is they are so close together that you can't go in with a vehicle to kill a fire or something like that. So we try to establish or put some taps close by that people can use it. So yes, we are also try to prevent, and that's part of a program that we run through, that prevent fires, or the start of fires. So that is my part of education and things like that. But we're looking, and we normally sometimes we go up in the air to look where's it maybe a potential that fires can start and so on. So yes, it's just prevention programs that we run to make sure. But I want to come back to what Terine said about education and also helping, or helping people. But for me, communications, you touch on it, is very important. We have WhatsApp group, and we communicate on Facebook and everything. But for me, structure is very important. We have to have structure. The other one is command and control. You see, what structure is command and control. Command and control, there must be a structure. So it's important that there's not a dear mekaar story when things happen. So it's important for me for that three things: communication, structure, and command and control. If you have that in place and you know how to do it, the fight is already half won.
Councillor, it seems like community members are emphasizing, and I'm monitoring all the comments. Thank you for joining in on this conversation. This really is a forum where people can engage and put questions directly to a disaster management specialist like Terine, and to someone working in safety and security from the Coega local municipality. So the members seem to be emphasizing that the wattle issue seems to be a major problem contributing to the fire risks. So my question to you is specifically, what kind of efforts have been made regarding this issue?
Yeah, no, we there's a abbreviation, WOF. It's not WOF. It stands for Working on Fire. And we have a team that look at, like I said, bush clearing. That is part of their job, and some of them, they are not full time. They come in and do, maybe for 3 months they work in certain areas to clean up the unwanted bush, or hulle noem in Afrikaans indringende bos. So then they go there and clean up. So no, we look at that, and also we give people notice. Also the unerven, where the erven stand for a long time, there's not building on it. We give people notice that you have to clean the plot because it's a fire risk. So all of that is in our management plan, that we have to make sure that we are safeguard of any fires.
Terine, you mentioned that many municipalities don't have these kind of systems in place in terms of safety and security prevention. What needs to be done? How can the safety of residents be ensured?
Sure, Kat, yeah, that is, I can be very, very blunt about that. Well, let me start by saying this. It's not all the municipalities. I know there's really municipalities that goes the extra mile and do the effort to do that. But in most of the municipalities, I think it must be a political change and the political will to do that, to put the community first and ensure their safety. As I said, Phalaborwa, there was this huge fire. The mayor promised a lot of stuff that's going to happen, and nothing had happened. And actually, it's worse. There is no road or street in that town that is not full of potholes, for instance. So that situation worsens. So I think it's part of a political will, and also the political change must be there. And then the other thing is the communities must basically start doing themselves the things that is important to them. So if it's not safe in the area, establish a neighborhood watch to ensure your safety. If you have fires, get people together and get the and training and be ready if there's a fire to look after yourself. So that is in short, Kat. I can't really say more about that, because if your municipality management and political side doesn't look after, but for instance, the firefighters, and look for the firefighters have the necessary PPE, that they have vehicles to work with, that the vehicles is working, there's discipline, there's structure, then you can do nothing. I mean, yeah, I know firefighters that have their PPE, their bunker gear, the suits that they wear is now about 5-6 years old, and you can't have that. I think it's every 2 years you have to get a new set. It's very expensive and so on, but the municipality doesn't have the funds to do that. So on the other hand, that's why there is private fire services that's starting in some of the towns where there's something that people, well, the fire brigade can't do anymore. I think in Joburg, I'm not sure, but I think they have about 3 fire engines left for the whole of Joburg. So there's a private service there, and people join them to have that rest of mind that if there's a fire, the fire will be looked after. And also the insurance companies say, yeah, thank you very much for this private services, because the private services react very quick to there. They have different type of technology that they use. So the water damage is also a lot less than your conventional firefighting, that is just that you just use a lot of water to get the fire doused. So yeah, that is also what's happening now. And actually, I will encourage people or municipalities to take hands with these private fire services, because if you take hands with them, you can service the community, and the community feels safe, and they start trusting the government again.
And how important is that trust now leading up to the local government elections in South Africa? Possibly a good time to implement some of these changes amid what we expect, flooding in KwaZulu-Natal and Limpopo and Mpumalanga area. Councillor, just before we go, thank you both very much for joining us, and thank you to everyone who has been on this live with us, engaging and adding and contributing meaningfully. I do encourage you to continue this conversation, as this live will be posted afterwards. Councillor, the burning question, are you ready? Are these Coega fires going to be declared a disaster? And if so, would this disaster be declared at local government level, or would this be escalated into regional level?
Yeah, let me just say that, let me just give some feedback about, I told you 1.2 million liters of water was put on the fire. We have 100 flight hours. And let me be honest, it's 150,000 per hour that we have to pay. So it comes to 3.5 million that we didn't budget for, but I mean, this is emergency. Now, coming back to the question, it's not us that can declare a disaster. We will put everything in, like the money that we use, the damage that we experience. And then there's a criteria that provincial and national declare this as a disaster area. And then maybe we can get some of that money, they pay us back or something like that. But there must be a criteria. There is a criteria before they declare is disaster. Remember, even with COVID, that was a few days old before the president declared. So there must be damage, not just any situation that declare disaster. So we will put everything, the reports and everything, we will send it through to district, province and national, and they will say that is a disaster that have happened, and therefore we then entitled to get paying back of some of the money and so on. Remember, there was a lot of firefighters coming from somewhere else. And I mean, they work 24 hours, and I mean, they are entitled to get something. So yes, we hope that it will be declared as a disaster, but it's up to the province and national.
Thank you for letting us know that that process is underway. Tareen, your final thoughts?
Sure, Katia, I've got a lot, but just my final thoughts is communities, get ready. If you don't know how, please make contact so we can assist. Take hands, join each other, and if there's something big like that, so you can just basically, it's like an engine that every part is working as it should. And for Gouga municipality, I would just say, actually a job well done. I think they've worked very hard under immense conditions. As I said yesterday, if the weather doesn't change quick, then you're working. And I mean, to work on a fire line for 24 hours, trust me, Kat, that's not easy. You are very tired, you can't focus. And you forget to eat because the adrenaline is keeping you running all the time. But Gouga, that was well done. I would like to be part of your debriefing. That will be very interesting. And communities, get together, be active in your area, become part of organizations in your area, and to make a difference in your community.
And I'd like to give that opportunity to you as well, Councillor Benson, just for some final remarks.
Yes, first of all, I have to say thank you to all role players, and there's a lot of them. I can't mention all of them, but most of all, I want to say thank you to God for really giving us strength, and we pray every and there's a lot of other churches that pray for the Gouga and the communities, but really you must see how we all work together. There's no one who say he can't do it. People even bring, if it's only a plastic bag to put something in, they bring it. So it was tremendous, and I want to say thank you to all the role players, everyone who contribute. I can't mention them. They know who they are, and I pray that they will be blessed with whatever they going to do in life going forward, that they will be blessed because of their kindness and goodness and things like that. So it was difficult, and still we still pray that we will finish it. We will kill the fire. So but I believe that we are near the end of it, and I just want to say thank you, and thank you for you that broadcasters. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Tareen. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody, for watching the looking into disaster preparedness in South Africa as a whole. Disaster management specialist Tareen has said that South Africa is not quite prepared at this stage, and we've had a look at the municipal preparedness and response to the Gouga fires that have been raging since last week, Monday. So it's been some time, and as the councillors mentioned, these are still ongoing in some areas with some flare-ups. So we will be watching that closely. We really hope that this conversation continues, that the community can get involved, can share their thoughts, can share their experiences. Everyone, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. I'm going to end this live right now.